Hi, welcome to What the Flip podcast. I'm Big Folk. I'm broadcasting to you from the Cayman Islands. Not really. I just wish I was in the Cayman Islands right now. But I'm sheltered here at home. But what a beautiful sight that would be like right now. Uh, anyway, I'm here doing our fourth video in the series of building a virtual workforce. And this one has to do with reviews and the number of reviews you need to do and what reviews are and all that kind of stuff. So I won't waste a lot of time pre discussing this. Let's just jump right in. There we go. The first thing I want to talk about is why do you want to do virtual team sessions or virtual workforce meetings to work on building your team's health? So, a virtual workforce, by definition, is really separated by distance. And that distance creates a lot of scenarios, a lot of emotional issues, a lot of performance issues. Workers are often left to their own initiative to accomplish tasks too, and a lot of times they need that background or they need that sort of assistance from other people. So workers are not being alone has its own challenges. Let's just say that. Unlike a standard virtual workforce, uh, it operates with minimal resources. So a person is out there, not only are they alone, but they don't always have all the available resources at their fingertips that a standard workforce has if you go into an office building, go to work. Motivation's actually reinforced by feedback. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you can self motivate yourself, but even that is premised on your feedback to yourself based on information you gather. So, feedback is critical to motivation, and it's really hard to have feedback if you don't get together. So, whether it's good or whether it's corrective kind of feedback, you notice I didn't say bad. I don't like the connotation of bad associated with feedback. You can provide negative kind of corrective information in a way that is helpful and has a grace orientation to it, so to speak. Imagine you're the only person on earth. How would you know whether what you were doing was the best thing to be doing? And were you achieving at the level you need to achieve? You need some sort of references to compare against, and that's why a person who's alone may not have those references that somebody in the office has. Now that the office environment with that much sometimes has an overload of feedback and creates all kinds of different issues like backbiting and people pushing to get ahead and gossiping and all that kind of stuff too, that you find a little less of in the virtual world, unless you happen to go to that virtual employee's Facebook page. Then you might have a different opinion of that. So, humans, in fact, animals, have a need to bond. There's just this need to be needed and to help, and it's part of who we are and our makeup. There are very few people who can live in isolation, total isolation. And those people we begin to wonder about. Your self actualization as a person depends on your value to others and your value that you bring to others, whether if you think it's internalized and you're just doing it because you like it. My guess is after a while that's going to get old unless somebody comes around and says, hey, you're doing a great job. This is really good. And just keep on going down this path. Those are things that we tend to need in our environment. So a virtual worker is also a resource for other workers. So if we don't connect, We just minimize the amount of resources we have collectively to really go out there and get the job done. So those are why you want to hold these virtual workforce sessions. Uh, is, there we go. Now, how? Well, the first thing we want to do here is we want to build a culture, and we want to put that into every session so you adhere to the desired culture defined by the workforce while you're operating. So in each session, we, as a leader, when you bring the workforce together, or even when you're operating as one person to the other in the workforce, uh, it's good to talk about the values. It's good to talk about how we're behaving. It's good to talk about the importance of that and keeping that in the open and transparent and have a lot of open communication about this. It helps to reinforce actually behaving that way. There should be no less than 2 sessions a year dedicated to assessing the culture and reviewing the results. Yeah, 2 sessions a year minimum, uh, where you're actually reviewing your cultural information in a way where you go out and gather and assess it, and then take a look at the data as a team and come back and go through all of that and decide how it's going, what you need to change, where are you compared to the desired versus where are you compared to where you actually are, what's the gap, how do we make the changes. So there's some tools for doing that. You can find them in a lot of places. One of them is I use human synergistic tools. You probably heard that on previous videos. That tool has so many possibilities to it. Every workforce member, and by the way, it's not all that expensive. Every workforce member should receive at least once a year a 360-degree assessment to include the leadership. Now, here's what's involved in that. That's where you sit down and take an evaluation of yourself. You may take several. You may take one that's a cultural assessment as you see yourself adhering to that culture. You may take a leadership assessment, doing the same way, or just a basic employee assessment. There's several levels of those that you can take, and the idea here is to get a snapshot of where the organization stands in terms of what we said we wanted to be versus where we are, and again, close the gap. Now, the way that happens is members do a self evaluation. Members evaluating each other, they evaluate each other. Members evaluate their leadership, and this leadership evaluates the members, and then any stakeholders involved with the virtual workforce might also be doing an evaluation. That could be your corporate office interface, that could be your clients, that could be your vendors, it could be a variety of people who you would have an interest in knowing how they felt about how you as a virtual team are or effectively interacting with them. So, 1 session a year, totally dedicated to team building based on the results of this assessment. So, you can do more. You can do, one every 6 months. I wouldn't recommend going much shorter than that, but certainly 6 months is, particularly when you first form the team, is certainly an acceptable time period to go. But it's also almost imperative you do it annually for sure, as long as you're a virtual workforce team working together. Because what happens, you may have people coming in and out of the workforce during that period of time. So this really gives them a chance to be successful if they're brought into the scope of things quickly. So this is how you build and sustain that culture. And this is one thing you want to spend time and energy doing as a virtual workforce team. Now, how another how is technology, and that may seem to be an obvious issue, but your review process has to be through technology. So it's not like you're flying these people in and doing this. This is actually going to happen through technology. So you have to know how to bring that to your people and to use that technology to make those assessments and review processes effective. So here's some things to consider. You must have the right technology that allows a full scope of communication. Things that will allow you to reach out there and do virtual hugs. This is what I call, let me get over here, see if I can get my camera. There we go. Virtual hug. Okay. Hugs are important, and they help you feel good about where you're going and each other. So, that's kind of a silly way of putting it, but it's certainly things. That's the kind of environment you have where you're helping and you're nurturing and things like that. Now, to do that, your technology really has to be reliable. You have to be able to count on it. It has to be user friendly to the workforce and leadership, and it must have versatility. And that means, for example, it must have enough features to allow for all the things you want to do: the assessment process, the feedback processes, the ability to do one on ones or total group sessions, uh, webinars. So, you might want to have multiple camera views. You want to be able to make sure whatever you have, for example, if you have 10, 15 people in your virtual workforce group, you may, as a leader, you want to make sure you have all 10 or 15 people on the screen while you're going through these processes. It needs to be adaptable to PCs and smartphones because people aren't always at their PC. So you need to be able to know that when you're involved in these, people know how to use their iPads or their iPhones or whatever your smart device is to actually interface during that period of time and really get something out of it. You need to be, so it's got to be able to work on all platforms: Chrome, Apple, Microsoft, Firefox, all the other, whatever the platforms are. Uh, You've got to allow, it's got to allow video, phone, and third party interfaces like Skype or other programs that you might use to interface with Zoom. For example, has a lot of different ways for people to interface with them that are third parties. There are people out there. Uh, you got to provide a variety of functions. It needs to be able to do things like webinar, meeting rooms, adaptive corporate video conferencing interfaces, and any of the other things that you may feel you need to do in order to get your meeting in place and actually happening. And you're going to be in foreign countries, so you need to keep this in mind too. You have to make sure that you have the services, like I said, that are reliable. And you have to work out all those bugs about uh, the consistency you need in that. There must be enough bandwidth to allow for virtual workforce needs. And it's almost like unlimited data and unlimited time. And when you, and in a virtual workforce, unless you're doing something like all employee meeting at Amazon with 100,000 employees, that's, you're going to have some restrictions on the number of employees who are allowed to be on the air with you. And how that works and how that operates. For example, I can have up to 99 persons in myself during a session like this right now. Now, Zoom is set up so I can put all of those people into what's called a waiting room. It's kind of like if you're a talk show host, There are people in the green room waiting to come in and meet with the talk show host when it's time. Until then, they're in the green room waiting. Well, that's true with Zoom here. You have the ability to, you don't have to, but you have the ability to put all of those people, all 99 of them in a waiting room, and only bring the people on live screen who you want to interact with. And so I might have 5 guests that I want to be on video and live on camera with Mike, and I can bring those into the room and we will be all together. You'll see our videos, but I can cut the videos off for everybody else so that, we don't have 49 people on a screen and then have to slide a screen over to see the rest of them. It's kind of hard looking at that many people. So you have those kind of features. Those are the things you want to make sure your software package has in this stuff. So technology is important. You make sure you cover these things. It's important. Okay. Okay. How you also want to allow for socialization and celebration. Socialization and celebration sessions should be planned into goals and objectives of the virtual workforce. So the workforce will determine how often you need to do those, what kind of ones you want to do, and things like that, premised on your strategy building that we did earlier. You look at that and you pretty much know what you want to do. So it's not like they're going to surprise you, unless you have a birthday and all of a sudden everybody gets together and surprises you, and you allow for that. Time should be set aside in each meeting, including business meetings, to socialize and celebrate. You don't have to have a full meeting of just celebrations all the time. Basically, you're going to be meeting to do business most of the time. The idea is to just carve out a few minutes of that time and allow some time just to talk, catch up, socialize, recognize any great performance that's been going on, things like that. You got to know they're going to be one-on-one session, and if they should happen, you've got to make sure you provide for that opportunity. It's like you may have one member call another member just to talk, and just to unload or whatever. And you want to be able to allow that information to happen. Hold on just 1 second while I take this beeps off my phone again. Okay, so those are things that we need to do. That was one of my friends calling me. He said he can't chat on Zoom with me because he's waiting on a COVID-19 test. His son, I'm going to take 1 second here in this particular. Well, let me finish this section here. So one session and just you just you do things like performance management one-on-one or with the group as a whole, motivation, reinforcement, feedback, counseling. These are just plain socializing. These are things you want to build in to your objectives and strategies. And the last thing here relative to this is the idea that socialization should happen frequently. It should be part of every meeting, but you ought to have additional meetings that are just focused on that, to talk about the health, to talk about issues, to talk about successes and feel good or whatever. And the communication among the team members should be encouraged. And private meetings should be private if they're desired. They're not something you want to record or keep notes on or whatever. When somebody comes to you across that, there are ways to make it private within programs like Zoom. Okay, back to my friend. He said he's waiting on a COVID-19 test, and the reason he's doing that, son was like in his early 20s. This guy was a rocked. He was a kind of guy that would kind of compete in Mr. Muscle contests, highly competitive, energized, young, dynamic, fantastic person. Uh, didn't pay attention to uh, the stay-at-home rule, and he went in the hospital. He got hit with COVID so hard he had to go in a hospital and be on a respirator. Now he's okay. He's out now, but he wrote a letter about it. It's in my Facebook page, somewhere in my my normal Facebook page, just me. And it was so touching to me because this was a guy who was so humble and so gracious and so honorable that he admitted that he didn't pay attention and it cost him dearly. He's now coming out of it. He's home from the hospital. He's on day 9 or probably day 10 now, or maybe 11. And uh, he's he's still weak. He's still weak. And he was saying you need to pay attention to the stay at home scenario because it is costing a whole lot. It cost him a lot. He may never be as good as physically as he was before. We don't know if he'll be able to recover, what it might have done to his wind power. And that's very important when you're an athlete like he is. But there's another dynamic, and it's the one I just mentioned to you. His family is now waiting on their COVID-19 tests. So he didn't just mess around with himself. He is telling you to stop thinking this is a hoax and not pay attention to staying at home because you affect all the other people you love. It was a great letter. I was just awed with this young man. He is an awesome guy, and I wish him all the best, and I wish his family all the best. They're all close friends of mine. But there you go, folks. Use programs like this to socialize. Don't try to get out there and think you can get by with it just because there's a smaller percentage of people in your area. This happens to be in Oklahoma, by the way. The governor has not put down a state mandate, which is absolutely asinine. But anyway, now I'm past that. Back to our session here on socializing and celebration. Just make sure you have set aside some time to do just these things, and not twice a year. I'm talking about during the month, maybe 2 or 3 times a year, and encourage people when they're not at work to use the system to integrate with their fellow workers, to build those relationships. It's phenomenal what this will do for your workforce. So the question becomes, so when do you do this? Frequency. A lot. The more frequent you can do it, the better. Now, you don't want to pile on. You don't want people feeling like you're looking over their shoulder as a leader, but you want to have these enough. You want to have them in every time you get together for a few minutes. You want to, in addition to that week, maybe get the group together once, or maybe they can get together on their own, or maybe they get together in smaller groups. But they need to have this. They need to know the leadership says it's okay to do this. It's okay to use the system to do this. And I'm going to be doing it with you also because I'm a team member and I want to be part of that team too. Okay. So this is important. There should be frequent video team meetings throughout the week. How many will be determined by the work you're doing, your assignment, all those kinds of things, and what the team members have come up with. You want interpersonal communication development. That's got to be part of the team's objectives. An assessment of team communication should be conducted along with the cultural assessments, however many times you do those cultural assessments, and the results need to be integrated with the cultural assessment because communication is a primary vehicle you use to establish your culture. So, this is a scenario, and you want to make sure that you take the time to have one of these team sessions needs to be the time to really talk about how you how you communicate, not just virtually, but how you communicate if you were sitting across the table for somebody. What are some of the barriers to communication? If you don't have video, all you have is audio, or maybe you don't even have either one, you're trying to use email. What are the variances between that and effectively communicating with me face to face? What things happen when you don't do that? What things happen when you do communicate face to face? You need absolutely a good training session on communications and what that means. It is more complicated. We take it for granted, but we also, because we take it for granted, we have a lot of problems when people try to communicate with us. One reason why bosses keep saying, I told them to do this, I don't know why they didn't do it. Well, you didn't communicate effectively. There's no question about it. So, I mean, I could point that out a dozen different ways to you. So you want to make sure you have that training session early in your team and workforce environment, early on as you formulate. And if you haven't had it and you've been formulated, you've been forced into it by this coronavirus scenario or any other scenario you get thrown into, you make sure that as soon as it's possible, you have that communication workshop. Leaders and team members have to be dedicated themselves to being accessible. You have to be accessible. You don't want to, as a leader, you don't want to burden everybody. You don't want to be looking on their shoulder every minute, excuse me. But you want to be available when they need you. You know, go back to those a couple of workshops ago, a couple of videos ago. Look at the one about formulating the team. And what you're going to find is what team members expected of their leader. Pay attention to that as a leader. It's very important. Also, what team members expect of each other. You've got to be respectful and considerate of your team members. The leader should arrange for each member themselves to receive continual training and development on an ongoing basis. That's how you get people to a self-actualized level in their life where, and they're always grateful for it. They're always seeking and chomping at the bit to get more and more, particularly as you come back and positively reinforce how it is building them, watching them grow. It's like when you're on a weight loss program and you've done all the things you're supposed to do and people are looking at you going, my God, you're looking great. That makes you feel good. This does too. When a person does a really good job and you spend some time and you've been around them enough and you just get off of the performance criteria stuff and simply say, wow, man, you're doing a great job. I can't believe the way you're liked in this team. That kind of stuff goes a long, long ways to motivating people far beyond their capacities, what they think their capacities are, not their capacities, what they think they are. So let me just summarize. And this is a quick summary, but it's a powerful one. Team health reviews are critical to the virtual workforce of success. It is just that simple. You do not take time to talk about the health of your team on a regular basis. It will slip, it will falter. You will see things like poor performance, discipline problems, turnover problems, loss of productivity, a lot of the various things that you see in a lot of other normal working environments like office buildings. But you may not catch it in time because you're not spending time reviewing it and looking and taking the temperature of your organization. You may not see it as fast as you would if you were in a normal work environment. It may sneak up on you. So, team health reviews are critical to the virtual workforce's success. And that's pretty much why, how, and when you need to be doing uh, frequent health checks or frequent meetings discussing the health of your organization. So I hope this is really helpful. Boy, I can't even emphasize how important this segment is. It's just phenomenally important to the success of any organization, but critical for the success of a virtual workforce. All right, I'm Vic Vogel. This is What the Flip podcast, and this is the fourth. Tonight, um, uh, we will, or well, actually, tomorrow night, I'm sorry. Tomorrow night, we're going to be talking about some final review processes, what you want to have happen. And to some ways, how you as a virtual workforce might be integrating with your corporate organization, and we're talking about organizational effectiveness and health, but not so much the health, but the organizational effectiveness, how you fit in as a virtual workforce, how you're going to know that, the ways to deal with that, because there are people you're going to be working with that are not familiar with what you're doing or how you're doing. And so we're going to talk about how to cope with all that kind of stuff tomorrow night about 9:30 or so. I got tonight on the mind. Look forward to meeting with you then. That'll be the last in the series. All of these are posted as I get them in and edit them and get them back to you. They're all posted in my Facebook page, What the Flip. And so to get to that, you go to facebook.com/What the Flip podcast. And once you're in there, you go to videos and then go to playlist. And there will be a playlist on there about building a virtual workforce. And all these videos will be in there for you to use. Feel free to share those with whoever you want to share them with. Okay. I'm not trying to market these. I'm not trying to sell. I'm trying to give them to you to help you become effective during this really tough time, and maybe even after this tough time. Catch you later.
You can like my Facebook page, What the Flip, and follow me, and stay tuned for more broadcasts of this podcast, What the Flip. Until then, have a great day.